Now, it seems the WikiLeaks chief, Julian Assange, may have outstayed his welcome at the Ecuadorian embassy in London. That's after the country's president said he will need to leave the building eventually. Assange has been holed up there since 2012 to avoid arrest and potential extradition to the US.
This situation cannot go on forever. Assange will eventually have to go, right?
Yes, indeed, yes. But his departure should come about through dialogue.
This isn't the first time we've heard speculation of Assange's 6-year tenure at the Ecuadorian embassy coming to an end. It is the first time such hints have come from such a high official, the president of Ecuador himself. Assange, of course, has been an asylum seeker effectively at the embassy since 2012. He fled there 6 years, 1 month ago, afraid that he would be extradited to the United States, where he's wanted, of course, for publicly leaking those military and diplomatic cables which allege war crimes and human rights violations. Now, of course, all this comes in the light of those reports about negotiations between the Ecuadorian government and the British government to come to some sort of conclusion to bring this matter to an end. The UK government has denied that this issue specifically was discussed during President Moreno's recent visit to the UK, but they have confirmed that negotiations have generally taken place and are continuing to take place to resolve the matter. Now, Moreno himself, it has to be said, is not a big fan of Assange. He's criticised him, describing him as a stone in the shoe, as a hacker, widely labelled as an inherited problem. Inherited because, of course, Assange was granted asylum under the presidency of Rafael Correa. Now, though, with this administration, it has been far from smooth sailing for the whistleblower.
For a person to stay confined like that for so long is tantamount to a human rights violation. The only concern I have is that I have never agreed with Assange's activity. I don't agree with hacking private emails to be able to obtain information, no matter how valuable it is, to expose certain undesirable acts of governments or people.
Of course, 6 years of confinement have taken their toll on Assange. There have been concerns about his welfare. Just last month, in fact, Foreign Office Minister Alan Duncan expressed those concerns to Parliament, stating assurances would be sought about his welfare should he leave the embassy. Assange's internet access was recently cut off, and the visits available to him by third parties have also been limited, leaving very much questions both from the public and the media about just how and when this 6-year saga will finally come to an end.
Well, it's great to smell fresh air of London again.
The government of Ecuador, loyal to its tradition of protecting those looking for safety in its territory or inside one of its diplomatic missions, has decided to give diplomatic asylum to Julian Assange.
This naturalization was granted on the 12th of December 2017. The Ecuadorian government is empowered to grant nationality status to the protected person.
Mr. Speaker, it's of great regret that Julian Assange remains in the Ecuador embassy. It's about time that this miserable little worm walked out of the embassy and gave himself up to British justice.
The former MI5 intelligence officer Annie Machion says that this development in the Assange case is a bad sign for the WikiLeaks boss.
I think it's certainly worrying for Assange, yes, there's no doubt about it, because the incoming president in Ecuador seems to see him as a problem. He's also under pressure from the Americans and from the International Monetary Fund to raise funding for his country, and apparently it's been speculated, reported, there have been threats that this might be withheld if he does not resolve the Assange case. But I think he's right to be worried about being extradited onwards to the United States, where his organisation WikiLeaks has already been categorised by Michael Pompeo as a hostile intelligence agency, where politicians have been calling for his assassination, for the death penalty, for the rest of his life in prison, and all for publishing. Just as any other media organisation publishes. So I think the concern is what the British will do. And of course the British government is in also a very difficult position with Brexit. They can't afford to annoy their American cousins too much at this juncture of British history. So it's a bit of a mess every which way.